I think it's like 80% is just one. So it would mean that long-term Cybercab would make several times more Cybercabs per year than all of our other vehicles combined.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question, a bit related, are there still plans to launch new models to address different price segments and vehicle types, which could materially expand the TAM for Tesla?
Yeah. To further on what we were just talking about, we've launched our least expensive models ever over the last few months and are continuing to expand those models globally. And over the last decade, we have continually brought down the cost of our vehicles without sacrificing range, performance, or premiumness. And we'll continue to do that, as Vaibhav said, investing in our factories. But these are all trade-offs of where we spend our time or money. And to Elon's point just now, with Cybercab coming, we are aiming to bring that Tesla premium ride experience to our largest market yet. That could be 5 or 10 times our current levels of production. This new autonomous market, you have to start thinking about us as moving to providing transportation as a service more than the total addressable market for the purchased vehicles alone. And of course, we do have plans to have robotaxis in various shapes and sizes, but obviously Cybercab will be the grand majority of that volume.
Yeah, the vast majority of miles traveled will be autonomous in the future. I would say probably less than, I'm just guessing, but probably less than 5% of miles driven will be where somebody's actually driving the car themselves in the future. It may be as low as 1%.
Great. The next question is, historically, Tesla has spoken about gross margin per model. Are there standalone gross margin targets for the current models, excluding the benefits for FSD sales?
We've talked about this with the previous two questions, but transportation, as we know, is changing. And I think we cannot keep applying the same framework from a car sales model to the future, what we are trying to do. So it has to be looked at it more holistically. Autonomy software will be the driver for growth from now on. And as we aim to maximize the global fleet, we have been laser focused on COGS from our side to make sure, because that is something which we manage. So we will keep focusing on that, but I think we need to look at it from a different dimension.
Yeah, like this Cybercab, the whole design of Cybercab was to optimize the fully considered cost per mile of autonomous driving. And it's a different design problem than if you're trying to design cars for people who will be driving versus being driven. So Cybercab is, like I said, super optimized for minimum cost per mile and also for a much higher duty cycle. So it would expect Cybercab to be used, probably 50 or 60 hours a week instead of the 10 or 11 hours a week that a driven vehicle is used. So typically people might drive their car for an hour and a half a day on average, so it's like 10 hours per week out of 168. But I think an autonomous vehicle is likely to be used probably 5 times as often, which means that you need to design the vehicle for a much more wear and tear per unit time and much more resilience. It's more like a commercial truck. That's in continuous operation or close to continuous operation is how you design an autonomous vehicle. And so we will have larger vehicles in the Cybercab in the future that are designed for full autonomy. And we've actually shown pictures of this and in fact have shown prototypes. So this is not exactly a secret. In fact, we've given people rides in them. So, we're not keeping this, hiding this light under a bushel here. It's like we're literally saying what we're going to do and have said what we're going to do for a while. I think long term we would really the only vehicles that we'll make will be autonomous vehicles, with the exception of the next generation Roadster, which we're hoping to debut in April. Hopefully. It's going to be something out of this world.
Fantastic. The next question we unfortunately have to skip because it's not related to Tesla, and we would like to remind folks who use the Say platform to please focus these questions on Tesla. With that in mind, we're going to move on to the next question, which is, what is the current bottleneck to increased robotaxi deployment and personal use unsupervised FSD? The safety and performance of the most recent models. Is it the safety and performance of the most recent models, or is it people to monitor the robotaxis in car or remotely, or is there some other blocker? I don't know, Ashok, if you want to kick off on this one.
Yeah, we have scaled the robotaxi service that's available to customers over the last year in order to just learn the scaling problems without having to wait for unsupervised. Basically, two goals. One is learn as much as possible from the fleet with the safety monitors, and secondly, be laser focused with the engineering team to solve the unsupervised FSD problem. I think we did both. By the end of last year, we had a long tail of issues that we were able to churn through, and then in the last couple of weeks, we had started our unsupervised robotaxi service to public customers in Austin. I think some customers took rides last week, and also the service continues today without any rear car or something like that. Separately, we did scale the fleet size in the Bay Area and in Austin, and through that we learned issues with charging and other issues that we would have seen once we scale the unsupervised fleet. So both are happening in parallel. A variant of the software that's used for the robotaxi service was shipped to customers with V14, and customers saw a huge jump in performance, a lot of happy feedback from customers. And since then, we have improved the software significantly as well. And customers will continue to see with their own software releases that the software is so good that they're screaming to remove the driver monitoring software because they're bored inside the car too much.
Adding to that a little bit with what Ashok said about learning about our charging and service needs, we're using our vast network of charging and service centers that really only Tesla has in this space to jumpstart our infrastructure build-out needs to get ahead of robotaxi and autonomous vehicle demand. And we expect that because of this network, we are the only company capable of scaling at the rate that is needed for the tsunami of autonomy that is coming.
Yeah.
Great. Moving on to the next question. After the unveil of the Cybertruck, Elon stated that if it didn't sell well, Tesla would build a more conventional-looking pickup. How practical would it be to create this new design on the Cybertruck architecture, and could it be conveniently built on the existing production lines?
Actually, in its segment, Cybertruck continues to be a leader and is selling more than any other electric truck out there, while our competition continues to pull back. But to the question itself, from a line standpoint, we always design our lines to be super flexible. We built 3 and Y on the same line. We built S and X on the same line still, showing that we can do that. The Cybertruck line was designed in the same way and is one of our most fully ready for autonomy platforms.
Yeah. But yeah, we will transition the Cybertruck line to just a fully autonomous line. And there's obviously a market there for cargo delivery, like you say, like localized cargo delivery within a city, within a few hundred miles, something like that. There's a lot of cargo that needs to move locally within a city, and an autonomous Cybertruck could be very useful for that.
Great. Moving on to the next question. Regarding Optimus, could you share the current number of units deployed in Tesla factories and actively performing production tasks? What specific roles or operations are they handling, and how has their integration impacted factory efficiency or output?
Yeah, I mean, we're still very much at the early stages of Optimus. It's an R&D, still in the R&D phase. We have had Optimus do some basic tasks in the factory, but as we iterate on new versions of Optimus, we deprecate the old versions, and so it's not I wouldn't say it's like it's not in usage in our factories in a material way. It's more so that the robot can learn. We wouldn't expect to have any kind of significant Optimus production volume until probably the end of this year.
Great.
Adding to it, like Optimus Gen 3 is an awesome robot that
It is
we
awesome.
yeah, it's an awesome robot that minimizes any differences. Like, it's basically, it looks like a human. People could be easily confused that it's a human. And this helps our strategy for the AI too, because you can learn from how humans do these tasks, and it's very easy to teach the robot to do in the same way as opposed to previous robots.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I should say, like, is there's a lot of news of like, various companies announcing layoffs and whatnot. But at our Tesla, factory in Fremont, we actually expect to increase headcount over time, and to significantly increase output from our factories. So we don't have any layoff plans. We expect to actually increase headcount.
Great. The next question, similar to the other autonomy questions, but slightly different. When is FSD going to be 100% unsupervised?
Well, it is 100% unsupervised in FSD. It's 100% unsupervised. I mean, we obviously have cars operating with no one in them and no safety monitor and no follow car or anything like that in Austin right now. For customers, we're being just very cautious with the rollout. I mean, with each successive version, as we prove it out, and we make sure that there are no sort of unique issues in particular cities, because like sometimes you get like some very difficult intersection, and it'll be an intersection where a lot of humans have accidents. By the way, there's like some pretty nutty intersections where there a lot of humans make mistakes and have accidents in various cities. So we want to make sure that FSD can handle those unusual intersections. Like if you take LA, for example, where Wilshire and Santa Monica combine is like there's about, I don't know, 20 traffic lights. And people are constantly having accidents there. So you want to make sure that FSD can handle unique things in a particular city. And we're also just being paranoid about safety. But with each successive release of FSD, we will reduce the amount of driver monitoring that's needed proportionate to the safety of the FSD build.
Great. As it relates to robotaxi, what has surprised you about the rollout so far? We've talked about what's constrained the fleet expansion to date, but it appears there are 200 vehicles based on public tracking. Is that something that we can confirm?
I wouldn't say there's anything that like really surprised us because we had a large fleet. We had all the metrics, so there was not sort of a surprise. It was just continued work to grind down on the long tail of issues, and that's what enabled us to launch the unsupervised service in Austin.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of robotaxi vehicles carrying paid customers, I think we're well over 500 at this point between the Bay Area and Austin.
There's varying amounts of like vehicles depending on the load, but yeah, you can have like more vehicles during like peak times and then like fewer vehicles in the off hours.
Yeah. But this will probably double every month type of thing. It's on an exponential curve.
I mean, one other thing people forget that, we've been deliberate on all this in the sense that we have the supporting infrastructure already been in place, whether it's service centers, charging. Yes, we'll have to augment as the fleet grows, depending upon the density of where the demand is and whatnot. But it's not something like we just stumbled upon it and we're starting to. We've been at it for years. Yes, not every city is designed the same way. Same thing, our infrastructure is also not the same in every city, but you have to give us credit that it's been a journey. And like Lars said, if there's some company which can do it, we've already been at it, so we should be able to deliver much better.
Great. The next question is about chase cars, which we already covered. So moving on to the last question. Elon, you've been spending significant personal time on Tesla's chip design.
Yeah.
What was the forcing function behind this increased involvement? And do you think external chip sales will represent a significant portion of Tesla's valuation by the end of the decade?
Well, I mean, I tend to spend time on whatever the most critical issue is for the company, and completing the AI5 chip design and having it be a great chip is arguably the number one most critical thing to get done, which is why I'm spending more time on that than currently anything else at Tesla. Spend pretty much every Saturday on this, and a chunk of every Tuesday. So it's like if I'm spending my Saturdays on something, it's going to be something pretty important. I do think AI5 will be a very good chip, and I feel quite confident about the design at this point. And then AI6, which will follow that, it'll be aspirationally would follow that in under a year, will be yet another big leap beyond AI5. So I feel pretty good about our chip strategy right now, but in terms of selling it outside of Tesla, we first need to make sure we have enough chips for all of our vehicle production and all of our Optimus production, and then we will actually use the AI5 chips in our data centers. We already use the AI4 chips in our data centers. So when we do training, it's a combination of the AI4 chips and NVIDIA hardware primarily that we do training with. So, but you say by the end of the decade, I mean, that's like, things are changing so fast that it's hard to imagine like what happens at the end of the decade. I mean, we might. I mean, when I look ahead at say what's the limiting factor for Tesla growth, if you go say 3 or 4 years out, I think it actually is chip production. Is there enough AI logic and enough AI and enough memory, enough RAM for our volume, and right now I see that as being the thing that probably limits our growth in 3 or 4 years, which would imply that we're not selling chips outside of Tesla because we need them. In fact, I think I think it's going to make sense, and this is definitely going to be a sort of a controversial thing, but I think Tesla needs to build a terafab. I mentioned this at the shareholder meeting, but even when we look at the output of the best case output of all of our key suppliers, and I'd say even they're beyond suppliers, they're like strategic partners, like Samsung, TSMC, and Micron. And we say like, what's the most you could possibly make? Then it's not enough. So I think in order to remove the constraint, the probable constraint in 3 or 4 years, we're going to have to build a Tesla terafab, a very big fab that includes logic, memory, and packaging domestically. And that's actually also going to be very important to ensure that we are protected against any geopolitical risks. I think people may be underweighting some of the geopolitical risks that are going to be a major factor in a few years. So now, a lot of people will say that's crazy. Fabs are really hard. I'm like, yes, I know fabs are really hard. I don't think they're easy. But
we do hard things.
We do a lot of hard things. We didn't used to have car factories. We didn't used to have battery cell factories or lithium refineries or mega pack factories or all these other things. We figured it out. So I think it's I think if we don't do the Tesla Terafab, we're going to be limited by supplier output of chips, and I think maybe memory is an even bigger limiter than AI logic. So, for example, we have chip supply deals with TSMC in Arizona and Samsung in Texas, but currently there are no advanced memory fabs at scale in the United States. There are zero, literally zero. Hopefully, Micron will have something going in a few years because they're all headquartered in Idaho, where they make a lot of potato chips. We need to make computer chips too. Anyway, we're working with our strategic partners on the chip front, memory and logic. But I think we got to also try our hand at building a large scale fab that integrates logic, memory, and packaging. And if we don't do that, we're just going to be fundamentally limited by supply chain, especially if there's some if in a worst case geopolitical situation, it would be quite a severe situation. So I think it would be, quite frankly, I think it'd be crazy not to try the Terafab. So yeah,
Great.
We'll have a bigger announcement on this in the future.
Awesome. With that, we're going to move on to analyst questions. The first analyst is Emmanuel from Wolfe Research. Emmanuel, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Great, thank you so much. It's Emmanuel Rosner from Wolfe Research. My first question is on the capex. You signal a pretty large increase to over $20 billion for this year. Was hoping to better understand where the investments are going. Any way to dimension for us which of the product line or technologies account for the bulk of the increase? And also, do you view this as like one time in nature, 2026, or I guess how much of this is an ongoing level of high spending for a number of years? And then just finally, still on that, with that level of spending, you're going to be burning cash. How should we think about your cash balance or any other way to finance this?
Yeah, so, Emmanuel, I tried to put this in my opening remarks too, but I'll try and go a little bit deeper. There's about 6 factories which we are starting production in this year. So there's a lot of capex, which is going into that. Then as we are trying to scale Optimus, we need a lot more compute. So we're putting more money towards compute as well. And
So
then
for training.
for training.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to be spending money to expand the capacity at existing factories. On top of it, we're just keep in mind that none of these numbers which I shared of 20 billion factors in anything to do with the solar fab or the semiconductor chip fab. Those would be, as Elon mentioned, would come later on. And you think your second part of your question was, is this one-off or would we expect more? I think we're getting into this investment phase because we have big aspirations. And when you look at it, some of these aspirations are, I call them as infrastructure play, especially if you have to do a chip fab and we have to do a cell manufacturing fab. Those are infrastructure plays. And that funding takes a little bit longer. And you would be in an investment cycle for a little bit longer. Initially, third part of your question was, how are we going to fund it? Initially, obviously, we have over 44 billion of cash and investments on the books. So we'll use our internal resources, but there are ways where we can fund it, especially when we look at the robotaxi fleet, because, anytime you have a consistent stream of cash flow, you can go and get money from the banks. And we have had conversations with banks about it. And that is something how we're going to do it. And then on the infrastructure play side, yeah, like I said, we don't have a number yet, but given that it's an infrastructure play, it's a longer tail, we will have to look at a little bit more in terms of how we fund it, whether it's through more debt or other means.
Great. Our next question comes from Andrew from Morgan Stanley. Andrew, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Great. Thanks so much for taking the question. I just want to start on the xAI investment that you guys announced today. You talked about there being some collaboration, between the companies. So I'm just hoping to get more information, or if you're hoping that you could shed more light on what that looks like, and maybe how the work xAI is doing can be leveraged at Tesla and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at the disclosure, which we also put in there, we do talk about this is literally a furtherance of our Master Plan 4. And even today, if you look at Tesla vehicles, we are using Grok in there. And as we look at things, whether we can do it ourselves, yes, there are a lot of things which we can do ourselves. But if there are things which xAI can help accelerate our progress, then why should we not do that? And that is the reason why we've gone ahead with such an investment, because this is part of the strategic initiative. Because as it is, if you remember, I talked about how many things which we're doing ourselves. If there are ways and means we can find efficient ways for others to help us, and xAI literally fits into that mold. So that's why we went ahead with it.
And we just had like a lot of investors ask us to do this. There was like a lot of investor, Tesla shareholders said like we should invest in xAI. So that's like we're just doing what shareholders like asked us to do pretty much. But Grok will be I think very helpful in say maximizing the efficiency of the management of a large autonomous fleet. So, I mean, if you've got an autonomous fleet that's, in the future, 10 million vehicles or tens of millions of vehicles, then optimizing the efficient use of that fleet, Grok will be, I think, way better than any heuristic solution or sort of manually managed solution. And if you say managing, say, a large team of Optimus robots to build a factory or build a refinery, and say a rare hypothetical, this is a hypothetical example, a rare earth ore refinery, which we do desperately need in America. Then you say, well, what's going to organize the Optimus robots to build that ore refinery? That would you need an orchestra conductor. And so then Grok would be kind of the orchestra conductor for the Optimus robots to build hypothetically, and it might not be hypothetical in the future. I'm just saying it's not currently on our plans, but we do need a lot more ore refining capacity in the U.S. So then what's going to manage? Let's say 1,000 Optimus robots to do.
You're on mute right now, so I'm not sure if you're trying to ask a follow-up question. Ready. We're going to move on to the next question, which is coming from Dan Levi at Barclays. Dan, please feel free.
Great. Thank you. Elon, you talked about some of the constraints on memory. Given the very tight supply, are there any near-term constraints on procuring memory? And if there are, to what extent could you look at modifying the functionality in the vehicle, similar to what you did in 21 when we saw shortages on MCUs? And maybe how are you thinking about bridging in the next few years?
Well, the Tesla AI is very compute efficient and very memory efficient. So I think one of the metrics one should consider for any given AI model is the intelligence per gigabyte, especially when you're constrained on RAM. Having an AI that has very high intelligence density per gigabyte. So you can say like for a given number of gigabytes, how much functionality can you get out of it? I actually think Tesla is ahead of the rest of the world in intelligence density of AI by an order of magnitude or more. Like this is going to sound like a pretty bold statement, but I kind of know what the intelligence efficiency of the big models are, like Grok, and like the honest and a bunch of the other models. And I Tesla's AI is like, in terms of its memory efficiency, I think more than an order of magnitude better. So that puts us in a pretty good position actually for scaling. And we actually do think that we do have a solution for logic and memory for, let's say, the next roughly 3 years. But if you start going beyond 3 years, and we look at the scaling plans and how many fabs are getting built, and especially if you factor in geopolitical uncertainty, there's always risk that maybe those chips don't arrive that people were expecting to arrive. So that's why I think we need to have more fab capacity in the U.S. Just in case chips don't stop arriving for any reason. This is really existential for Tesla, because if Optimus is completely useless without an AI chip. It's not like, at least the cars we can put steering wheels and pedals in, or retrofit them if need be. But Optimus is just a mannequin without, it's like the Tin Man or whatever from the Wizard of Oz. But even worse, at least the Tin Man could walk. Optimus won't even be able to, or just sit there without an AI chip. So we've got a good solution for a significant scale through, for the next roughly 3 years. Beyond that, we will be supplier limited, and so we've got to figure out some game plan to not be supplier limited.
Great. Our next question is going to come from George at Canaccord. George, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking my question. So there's been a surge of startups, particularly from China, entering the humanoid market, and wondering what the long-term competitive advantages that keep Tesla ahead are, and how, based on what you've seen, will Optimus fundamentally differ from these competitors? Thank you.
Well, I do think that by far the biggest competition for humanoid robots will be from China. China is incredibly good at scaling manufacturing, actually quite good at AI, as you can see from the open source, or not the open source, but the sort of, I guess some of them are open actually, but basically the models that China is distributing for free are actually quite good, and they keep getting better. So China is very good at AI, very good at manufacturing, and will definitely be the toughest competition for Tesla. To the best of our knowledge, we don't see any significant competitors outside of China, but China will definitely be tough competition. There's no two ways about it. I always think like people sort of outside of China kind of underestimate China. China's an ass kicker next level. So, I guess, we're going to build. We think Optimus will be much more capable than any robot that we are aware of under development in China. So we think we'll be ahead in terms of the real world intelligence, the electromechanical dexterity, especially the hand design, which is by far the hardest thing in the robot. And in fact, I'd say there's really three hard things about humanoid robots. building an incredible hand that has the same degrees of freedom and dexterity as a human hand is an incredibly difficult engineering challenge. Then there's the real-world AI and scaling production. Those are the three hardest problems by far for humanoid robots. I think Tesla is the only company that actually has all three of those components. Yeah.
Great. And our last question is going to come from Colin at Oppenheimer. Colin, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Thanks so much. Guys, you talked a lot about the CapEx spend, but this is an incredibly ambitious technology development program that you're talking about. Can you talk a little bit about the R&D spend and how you're thinking about the synergies of the different components, particularly on the hardware side? If you think about, batteries into chips, into memory and the efficiency of the system, and what sort of advantages you think you'll end up getting out of, some of these purpose-built devices that you'll end up integrating into multiple end markets.
Well, really all we're trying to do is make sure that we can scale to very high volume with autonomous vehicles, with humanoid robots, and that we address geopolitical risk, which I think, there's so many companies out there that are asleep at the switch with regard to geopolitical risk. They're or they just have their head in the sand and hope nothing bad will happen. I'm way more paranoid than that. I always think of Andy Grove's famous statement, "Only the paranoid survive." Why did he come up with that statement at Intel? Let's think. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that statement. So we're going to be paranoid and make sure that we can continue to build batteries and robots and AI chips no matter what happens. And companies that don't do that, a bunch of them will cease to exist.
Yeah, remember, all this comes out of necessity. It's not that we want to do it. It's just we have no choice.
Yeah, we built the most advanced lithium refinery in the world, by the way. It's not just, like our lithium refinery in Corpus Christi is not just a copy of what others have done. It's an entirely new process that is fundamentally more efficient and more advanced than anything else in the world. The same is true of our cathode refinery here in Austin. And we wish others would build this. Can other people please, for the love of God, help? In the name of all that is holy, can others please build this stuff?
It's not the first time you've asked.
Exactly. This is not the first time you've said something like this.
Like, why do we have to build these things? Why can others not also please, can someone else build these things? It's very hard to build these things. And we build them out of desperation, not because nobody else is building lithium refineries and cathode refineries. We're pretty much not just the largest, but also the only lithium refinery and cathode refinery in America. So we're making moves to make sure that no matter what happens, Tesla will prosper.
Great. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for Q&A today. We really appreciate everyone's questions, and we look forward to talking to you next quarter. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
All right, cool.